welcome back to Black Bear News, where I like to cover a lot of things, but the main thing I like to cover is climate change, specifically abrupt climate change. Why? Because it's, as I was telling you about a political discussion I had a few weeks ago, one of the things I said to the guy I was talking to was that climate change is, it's political, but it's outside of politics. It's just so huge that it overshadows kind of everything that we're doing or saying or thinking. There's the right and their whole story and everything that they're doing and all their propaganda and all their, their agenda, and then there's the left and their propaganda and their story and their agenda and their whatever it is they're doing, and then there's climate change, which is real and basically will sweep all of those stories away and give us a brand new story, and it won't be a very fun one. It's not going to be enjoyable. If anybody enjoys the climate change story or the abrupt climate change story as it unfolds, I venture that maybe it might be a few wealthy for a little while, or maybe somebody who picked just the right spot to weather the storm for a little while. And I think that if there's a way out of this mess, all signs point to no, but if there's a way out of this mess, it has to be through a brand new story. It cannot be through whatever story it is that the media is telling you now. Whatever, our entire propaganda apparatus is based on telling you about how it is we are supposed to live our lives, right? We're supposed to, go to school and get a job and have a mortgage and have an IRA and have, plane trips to Europe and go to China, whatever all that is, all that stuff, whatever it is that our fancies desire, that's what we're supposed to be pursuing, and as I said, all the motivational speakers and all the, the mystics, the new mystics and the healers and the, whatever you want, in the preachers, if you will, they're all telling you that you can have whatever you want if you just, get rid of all these barriers in your life to succeeding and, the secret and all that kind of good stuff. But so everything is pushing you into this reality of, well, it's an illusion, but the reality for most people is that, this is what I'm supposed to have. These are the things I'm supposed to get. This is where I'm supposed to be. And all of those things are an absolute illusion in the face of climate change. All of those things don't matter. All of those things are blown to bits and shredded and stomped into the ground by the reality of climate change. Climate change destroys everything, including your dreams. So, it's incumbent on us to dream a new dream or think new thoughts or desire other things or less things or different things. Is it going back to a past lifestyle? Probably a bit of that. Is it, relying on some kind of new technology to save us? Probably a bit of that. It's going to have to be a lot of different things that nobody expects to work together in order to make it out of this, if that's what's going to happen. But first, all of the things that we know and love are going to go away. And they're either going to go away violently and cataclysmically, or they are going to go away slowly, possibly by thoughtful action, possibly by thoughtful design, who knows. But all of those things are going to have to go away. The flying and the driving and the buying and the doing, all of those things, all of the things that we can access so easily right now, we access them at the expense of the environment. We access them by destroying our world, by destroying the very habitat that we need to survive. So again, we have to dream new dreams and imagine new things. But it's very difficult right now because people are wholly and absolutely invested in the pursuits and the dreams and the life that they've been told that they should be leading. This channel seeks to maybe pop that bubble little by little. Most of y'all on here already know the bubble be popped. I'm going to read a comment from Zombie Vampires. This is from a few days ago. 12 years to change our grid, transportation, and consumption habits. Millions will still migrate and ultimately die. Particles will fall from the sky and raise temps another notch and melt more ice, but we may still have a chance at survival for someone else's kids. However that looks, we still have to fight for our humanity. If we all end up going down with the ship, at least we will die knowing that we tried our best. It's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. It's all about taking that young person, looking them in the eyes and telling them that you took responsibility, that you had the ability to respond, that you sacrificed, that you didn't just lie down and watch this beautiful life-sustaining planet rot away as comfort and convenience took priority. And that, you know, thank you for that comment, Zombie Vampires. I enjoyed that. There's a duality. There's a, you know, there's opposing forces going on too in the saving or the destruction of the earth. And that is, you know, all of the things that we are supposed to be giving our children or giving to each other or giving, you know, to our ancestors are all meaningless if we can't give them the earth, if we can't give them the gift of, you know, somebody else having a shot at life as they might know it. Nothing that we do right now, nothing that we're doing right now as far as like encouraging our children to even take on this destructive, absolutely horrific capitalist paradigm. You know, nothing about that is a gift at all. It's actually, as George Monbiot put it so eloquently, the gift of death. So how do we start giving our children life? We teach them to farm, to plant, to grow things, to live off the land, to not need all the things that we need. I think that's a start. If we teach them about the poisons in everything that they do and everything that they buy and everything that they consume and every vehicle that they drive or fly in, that might be a good start. I'm going to read some articles. So there's some more weather going on in Europe. This is from today. Freak weather system brings severe snowfall and flooding in Europe. BBC Weather claimed a freezing weather system has swept across the Mediterranean, bringing a deluge of snow in northern Spain and extreme flooding in Italy. BBC Weather said both Spain and Italy have been hit by severe weather over the past 24 hours, with strong winds sparking heavy rainfall in Venice and heavy snowfall in northern Spain. British holidaymakers will have seen their plans disrupted, oh boy, after extreme flooding left Venice underwater. Northern Spain has also been hit by an early taste of winter after extreme snow hit the country. BBC weather forecaster Matt Taylor said, "This is Venice, a city of canals, city underwater," et cetera, et cetera. BBC weather forecaster Sarah Keith Lucas warning that the unsettled system in Europe could head near Britain on Tuesday. She said, "As we look through Monday night and into Tuesday, notice this deep area of low pressure across Central Europe. That'll bring some heavy snow towards the Alps, some rain across parts of France, and it'll move towards the southeast corner of the UK. This area of low pressure, some uncertainty how far east or west it'll get. At the moment, it looks like Tuesday we'll see that rain in the southeast of England and East Anglia too." So apparently, this is a result of the remnants of a what was a hurricane or a tropical storm, Oscar, Hurricane Oscar. This is from 2 days ago. Hurricane Oscar is barreling towards the UK and is forecast to reach British shores this week, following on from one of the coldest autumn nights in a decade. Hurricane Oscar is swirling in the Atlantic Ocean and is on a direct path toward the UK. Britain is forecast to be hit by the remnants of Hurricane Oscar, bringing miserable conditions in wind and rain. The poor forecast follows on from one of the coldest nights of the autumn so far, as Brits woke up to frost and icy temperatures. A low of negative 5.9 C was recorded in Northern Ireland. The Met Office described the past few days as some of the coldest October days in a decade. The 15th storm of the Atlantic hurricane season is threatening to bring unsettled weather to British shores. Met Office meteorologist Steve Keats said, "It's a fairly messy picture to take us into the start of the week, and we've got very similar conditions for the middle part of the week too. This low pressure spinning about on the continent across the North Sea, bringing some wet weather to eastern areas." Hurricane Oscar strengthened on Monday, but forecasters said the storm was curving away from land over the Atlantic Ocean. All right. And more on the weather in Spain. This is, I don't know what site this is. It's an alert map. I think it's European. Imogen send this to me. I don't know where this is from. Spain's freak weather has seen the Mediterranean nation battered by a tornado just 48 hours after the country was blanketed by heavy snowstorms. More than 38,000 homes were left without power for a whole day after the tornado ravaged the island of Menorca yesterday. More than 50 trees and hundreds of power lines were pulled down by the powerful storm, leaving thousands of residents without electricity. Neighboring Principality Asturias, 25,000 properties also had their power knocked out by the tornado. A week-long spell of rain, snow, and unseasonably low temperatures has been blamed on the arrival of a mass of polar air lingering over the Iberian Peninsula. So the polar vortexes starting early. At least one person remains missing in the town of Camarinas in Galicia, northwestern Spain. With reports the man may have fallen into the sea while fishing. The bad weather has returned to the Balearics just weeks after the region was hit with flooding, in which 13 people were killed. Heavy snowfall across the north of the country has led to traffic chaos on Spain's train networks and roads. There are currently weather warnings in place across 29 provinces, as well as the North African enclave of Melilla. The highest alerts for the provinces of Burgos, Castellón, and Tarragona and freezing temperatures are expected to last until at least Wednesday. Let's move on. I have two articles from The Guardian that look to be pretty juicy. Everyone has seen this one, I think, of course. Sam Carana posted this on Facebook earlier today, but this is by Damian Carrington from Monday the 29th. Humanity has wiped out 60% of animal population since 1970, report finds. The huge loss is a tragedy in itself, but also threatens the survival of civilization, say the world's leading scientists. Humanity has wiped out 60% of mammals, birds, fish, and reptiles since 1970, leading the world's foremost experts to warn that the annihilation of wildlife is now an emergency that threatens civilization. The new estimate of the massacre of wildlife is made in a major report produced by WWF and involving 59 scientists from across the globe. It finds that the vast and growing consumption of food and resources by the global population is destroying the web of life, billions of years in the making, upon which human society ultimately depends for clean air, water, and everything else. We are sleepwalking towards the edge of a cliff, said Mike Barrett, Executive Director of Science and Conservation at WWF. If there was a 60% decline in the human population, that would be equivalent to emptying North America, South America, Africa, Europe, China, and Oceania. That is the scale of what we have done. This is far more than just being about losing the wonders of nature. Desperately sad though it is, he said, this is actually now jeopardizing the future of people. Nature is not a nice to have. It is our life support system. We are rapidly running out of time, said Professor Johann Rockström, a global sustainability expert at the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research in Germany. Only by addressing both ecosystems and climate do we stand a chance of safeguarding a stable planet for humanity's future on Earth. Many scientists believe the world has begun its sixth mass extinction, the first to be caused by a species, Homo sapiens. Other recent analysis have revealed that humankind has destroyed 83% of all mammals and half of the plants. Other recent analysis have revealed that humankind has destroyed 83% of all mammals and half of plants since the dawn of civilization, and that even if the destruction were to end now, it would take 5 to 7 million years for the natural world to recover. The Living Planet Index, produced for WWF by the Zoological Society of London, uses data on 16,704 populations of mammal, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians, representing more than 4,000 species, to track the decline of wildlife. Between 1970 and 2014, the latest data available, populations fell by an average of 60%. 4 years ago, the decline was 52%. The shocking truth, said Barrett, is that wildlife crash is continuing unabated. Wildlife and the ecosystems are vital to human life, said Professor Bob Watson, one of the world's most eminent environmental scientists and currently chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Biodiversity, that said in March that the destruction of nature is as dangerous as climate change. Nature contributes to human well-being culturally and spiritually, as well as through the critical production of food, clean water, and energy, and though regulating the Earth's climate pollution, pollination, and floods, he said, and through regulating, sorry. The Living Planet report clearly demonstrates that human activities are destroying nature at an unacceptable rate, threatening the well-being of current and future generations. Let me read that sentence again. The Living Planet report clearly demonstrates that human activities are destroying nature at an unacceptable rate, so threatening the well-being of current and future generations. So this is just talking about destroying, animals and nature and habitat, not climate change. So like even all you climate change is naturalers or blah blah blue blah blue blues, whatever it is you want to believe, we are destructo hand type people. We are just destroyers. We are just wholesale just we are just sucking up all of the resources of the earth and spitting it out into landfills and into the ocean and into plastic and into whatever else we can possibly think of to suck all these resources into. That's what we're going to do. They're all sucked into big box stores and Walmarts, Targets, Home Depots, Lowe's, sports chalets, et cetera, ad infinitum, ad nauseum, all to become garbage. The biggest cause of wildlife losses is the destruction of natural habitats, much of it to create farmland. 3/4 of all land on Earth is now significantly affected by human activities. Killing for food is the next biggest cause. 300 mammal species are being eaten into extinction, while the oceans are massively overfished, with more than half now being industrially fished. Chemical pollution is also significant. Half of the world's killer whale populations are now doomed to die from PCB contamination. Global trade introduces invasive species and disease, with amphibians decimated by the fungal disease thought to be spread by the pet trade. The worst affected region is South and Central America, which has seen an 89% drop in vertebrate populations. 89%. Largely driven by the felling of vast areas of wildlife-rich forest in the tropical savanna called Cerrado. An area the size of Greater London is cleared every 2 months, said Barrett. It is a classic example of where the disappearance is the result of our own consumption, because the deforestation is being driven by ever-expanding agriculture producing soy, which is being exported to countries including the UK to feed pigs and chickens, he said. The UK itself has lost much of its wildlife, ranking 189th for biodiversity loss out of 218 nations in 2016. Way on down the line. The habitats suffering the greatest damage are rivers and lakes, where the wildlife populations have fallen 83% due to the enormous thirst of agriculture and the large number of dams. Again, there is a direct link between the food system and the depletion of wildlife, said Barrett. Eating less meat is an essential part of reversing losses, he said. The Living Planet Index has been criticized as being too broad a measure of wildlife losses and smoothing over crucial details, but all indicators from extinction rates to intactness of ecosystems show colossal losses. They all tell you the same story, said Barrett. Conservation efforts can work, with tiger numbers having risen 20% in India in 6 years, as habitat is protected. Giant pandas in China and otters in the UK have also been doing well. But Marco Lambertini, Director General of WWF International, said the fundamental issue was consumption. We can no longer ignore the impacts of current unsustainable production models and wasteful lifestyles. The world's nations are working towards a crunch meeting of the UN's Convention of Biological Diversity in 2020. Why not? Moving on up to 2019, when new commitments for the protection of nature will be made. We need a new global deal for nature and people, and we have this narrow window of less than 2 years to get it, said Barrett. This really is the last chance. We have to get it right this time. Tanya Steele, chief executive at WWF, said, "We are the first generation to know we are destroying our planet and the last one that can do anything about it." If that doesn't make you say, holy fucking shit, I don't know what will. This article, so that leads me to this article, and probably something we're going to see a lot more of. Also from The Guardian, this is from today. The unseen driver behind the migrant caravan is climate change. And that's actually the very first thing I thought when I heard about this story. Excuse me. This is by Oliver Millman, Emily Holden, and David Agrin from New York, Washington, and Huixla, Mexico. While violence and poverty have been cited as reasons for the exodus, experts say the big picture is that climate change is forcing farmers off their land, and it's likely to get worse. I just read some articles a few months ago about droughts in Central America and South America affecting crops very adversely. Thousands of Central American migrants trudging through Mexico towards the U.S. have regularly been described as either fleeing gang violence or extreme poverty. But another crucial driving factor behind the migrant caravan has been harder to grasp: climate change. Most members of the migrant caravans coming from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, three countries devastated by violence, organized crime, and systemic corruption, the roots of which can be traced back to the region's Cold War conflicts. Experts say that alongside those factors, climate change in the region is exacerbating and sometimes causing a miasma of other problems, including crop failures and poverty. And they warn that in the coming decades, it is likely to push millions more people north towards the U.S. The focus on violence is eclipsing the big picture, which is that people are saying that they are moving because of some version of food insecurity, said Robert Albro, a researcher at the Center for Latin American and Latino Studies at American University. The main reason people are moving is because they don't have anything to eat. This has a strong link to climate change. We are seeing tremendous climate instability that is radically changing food security in the region. Migrants don't often specifically mention climate change as a motivating factor for leaving because the concept is so abstract and long-term, Albro said. But people in the region who depend on small farms are painfully aware of changes to weather patterns that can ruin crops and decimate incomes. Pausing for a rest at the first of the three recent migrant caravans passed through the Mexican town of Huixla last week, Jesus Canan described how he used to sow maize and beans on a hectare of land near the ancient Copan ruins in western Honduras. An indigenous Chorti Maya, Canan abandoned his lands after repeated crop failures, which he attributed to drought and changing weather patterns. It didn't rain this year. Last year it didn't rain, he said softly. My maize field didn't produce a thing. With my expenses, everything we invested, we didn't have any earnings. There was no harvest. Desperate and dreaming of the United States, Canan hit the road in early October and joined the migrant caravan. He left behind a wife and three children, ages 16, 14, and 11, who were forced to abandon school because Canan couldn't afford to pay for their supplies. It wasn't the same before. This is forcing us to emigrate, he said. In past years, it rained on time. My plants produced, but there's no longer any pattern to the weather. Ooh. There's no longer any pattern to the weather. And many people are seeing that and reporting that on this channel and elsewhere. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol data shows a surge in outward migration from western Honduras, a prime coffee-producing area, said Stephanie Lutert, an expert in Central American migration and security at the University of Texas. Many of those are farmers or agricultural workers who take to the road when coffee growing is no longer profitable, such as Antonio Lara, 25, from the Honduran city of Ocotepeque, who joined the caravan with his wife and children, aged 6 and 18 months. Coffee used to be worth something, but it's been 7 years since there was a decent price, he said. Lara said he thought that changing weather patterns had a lot to do with the problem, though he also blamed his plight on greedy bosses and coffee dealers. I didn't leave my country because I wanted to. I left because I had to, he said. A third of all employment in Central America is linked to agriculture, so any disruption to farming practices can have devastating consequences. Since around 2012, coffee plants across Central America have been ravaged by an epidemic called leaf rust, which according to some estimates has affected 70% of farms. Normally, the fungus dies when temperatures drop in the evening, but warmer nights are allowing it to thrive, said Sam Dupree, researcher at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Very interesting. The impact of climate change on the fungus remains in debate, but Dupree said the situation in Guatemala shows even without a direct climate change link, what happens when these global commodities fail. One of the things I found was that people, largely because they weren't able to pay their debts to get money for food, they started to migrate, Dupree said. People were telling me before the coffee leaf rust hit, we didn't migrate. Now we do. It's normal. A study of Central American migrants by the World Food Program last year found that nearly half described themselves as food insecure. The research found an increasing trend of young people moving as a result of knock-on poverty and lack of work. Climate change is bringing more extreme and unpredictable weather to the region. Summer rainfall is starting later and has become more irregular. Drought, fueled by El Nino, has gripped much of Central America over the past 4 years. But the period has been occasionally punctuated by disastrous flooding rains. As a result, more than 3 million people have struggled to feed themselves. Coffee and maize are sensitive to temperature and rainfall changes, said Albro. If a coffee crop fails, you can't just turn on a dime and do something else. It takes a long time to recover. There have been several lost crops in a row, and it's caused tremendous hardship for small-scale farming. Farmers first migrate to urban areas where they confront a new set of problems, which in turn prompt them to consider an international odyssey. There's an internal movement where someone will go to, say, Guatemala City and then perhaps get extorted by a gang and then move to the US, said Lutert. When they get here, they will say they've moved because of violence, but climate change was the exacerbating factor. More than 50,000 Guatemalan families were apprehended trying to cross the US border in the year to October. 50,000. Double the number of the previous year, according to US Customs and Border Protection. 50,000. That's huge. People move for a tangle of different reasons, and climate change's influence is often far-reaching. And yet hard to measure, but the World Bank estimates that warming temperatures and extreme weather will force an estimated 3.9 million climate migrants to flee Central America over the next 30 years. This mass movement of people risks destabilizing their home countries and presents a challenge for destinations such as the US. The 1951 UN Refugee Convention sets out clear criteria for the granting of asylum, such as persecution and war, but climate change is not on the list. With an estimated 150 million to 300 million climate refugees set to be displaced worldwide by 2050, a new international framework will be needed to accommodate them. If your farm has been dried to a crisp, or your home has been inundated with water and you're fleeing for your life, you're not much different from any other refugee, said Michael Doyle, an international relations scholar at Columbia University. The problem is that other refugees fleeing war qualify for that status while you don't. Doyle is part of a group of academics and advocates pushing for a new treaty that would focus on the needs of displaced people rather than their exact reason for leaving in order to cover the expected wave of climate migrants. Any reform to the landmark refugee agreement is quite unlikely at present, Doyle said, due to the complexity of such a new arrangement, as well as the rise of nationalist governments in places such as the US. The president of the US is using migrant caravans as a political wedge issue as a way to get elected, Doyle said. If we reopen the 1951 convention, it's more likely to be weakened rather than strengthened. We aren't in a state where reforms, however sensible, can be made. There just isn't the global statesmanship at the moment, nowhere near it. Yeah. Frighteningly, and also interestingly, how soon before we see actual climate change refugees or migrants within the US, within other countries that are already seeing a large influx of migrants, such as Europe, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's crops failing all over the world. How soon does climate and food instability start just affecting people en masse? And then there's really nowhere to go. Just trying to figure out ways to get some food. It does not bode well for the future. Needless to say. That's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.